It was mainly the three that were really close, and then one straggler. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't. Didn't recognize it.
I don't know. Let's talk. There's a reason to why to do it, and reason not to. Okay, we all ready? You have to turn it on here. Somebody said that at the league training. Well, that's apparently having it found and rather disturbing. But it's one that I think I should make an effort to remember. Okay. We would like to welcome everyone now to our Highland City financial year 2024-2025 tentative budget meeting on April 30th, 2024. It is 7:08 p.m. We'll begin by having an invocation or a prayer by Doug Courtney, and I will do the flag.
Oh, great and all-wise God, we gather together today, thankful for many blessings received, and asking that you fill us with your wisdom, that we might better understand the budget we're looking at and understand its implications for the city and how it meets the needs of the city. Ask that you keep all of us and all of the city safe this evening and going forward. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Bill, please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that, we will go ahead and start a deep dive in. I believe, Dave, are you going to kind of be leading us out on this?
Yeah, I've got a short PowerPoint presentation to go through. Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to say before I get going, or just jump right into it?
Go right ahead, sir.
All right. Yeah, so a PowerPoint, I promise it's shorter than the last one. I'd like to do less talking and hear more of your discussion. So I put back on this PowerPoint an updated all funds summary. So you can find this on page 4 of the paper version in front of you. So this, just as a reminder, shows you where we estimate to begin the new fiscal year as far as fund balances in each of the various funds. And then our budgeted revenues, expenditures, and then the net either revenue, or if we were to have a deficit, which we don't in any of these, that would show there. And then the next column are planned use of prior year fund balance. And then the final column, an estimated ending fund balance. At the request of Councilmember Smith, we added a total at the bottom, so you can see the entire city, all funds combined, kind of what our reserves are, and what we're planning to do with them. I added a couple of pie charts. They're a little bit messy looking. I apologize just because there's so many small categories and then a few big ones, but just a visual representation of the general fund revenues. So you can see there, taxes are the vast majority of our general fund revenues, split between sales tax, property tax, and franchise taxes. Intergovernmental fees are things like our BNC road funds, things that we get from the state. And then our public safety fee, you can see there just under 8% of our general fund revenues. Garbage just under 10%, and then the others just really small amounts. And then another kind of crazy pie chart with our general fund expenditures. So you can see no big surprise here that police and emergency services are our big dollar items. And then Parks and Recreation, garbage, streets, and then transfers out follow. The transfers out is mainly transfers that we're making from the general fund into the capital project funds in order to do projects. So what we wanted to focus on tonight is the various high-level changes in the budget. The one that was emailed to you and what's in front of you, the final few pages have some of the detailed changes. If you have any questions about those, please get back with Aaron or myself, and we're happy to explain those changes. We wanted to keep it a little bit higher level and just go over some of the main things that have changed since March 19th when we last had a presentation. So the first thing with recent sales tax numbers that have come in for March and April, they looked much better than what we've been seeing in the couple of months before that. So because of that, we felt comfortable adjusting our current fiscal year projection up $30,000 and then also just carrying that forward as an increase in our proposed budget. So from the current fiscal year to what we're proposing for the new budget year, we're still keeping things flat just to be conservative, but we do think that we can increase that by $30,000 from what was presented last time. Interest revenues, this is in the meetings that we had with all of you, was pointed out that in some cases it looked like we were budgeting just as much in interest, even though we were planning on using some of the fund balance during the year. So very great comment that we took, and these were the two funds where I think that really had an impact that we took another look at and decreased our projected interest revenue in FY25 in Parks Capital Fund and in the Transportation Fund. One thing that we mentioned earlier is that URS made a change this year where Tier 2 hybrid employees are required to pay a portion of their contributions for their retirement. That is a 0.7% contribution that employees are required to make. The city is not allowed to cover that by making a direct payment to URS. So the state and URS recommended that the various entities make these employees whole by giving them a small increase in their wages to compensate for what will be coming out in their URS contributions. So we...
Do you want us to save your questions, or do you want us to try to ask at the time when it comes?
Either way.
So help me understand. So I just want to understand. So what they're saying is they're going to force an extra 1.5% to go in their retirement. Is that right?
So it's actually the same percentage of contribution for Tier 2 hybrid and then the non-hybrid employees. It's the same contribution percentage, but the city is only supposed to pay 15.19%, and then the employee has to pick up 0.7%, where for the non-hybrid employees, we're paying the 15.89%. And so in order for that to not show up as a decrease in pay for the employees, we're proposing this 0.7% increase.
Where we already pay, I mean, so that percentage, what you're saying is last year we were paying the higher percent, like 18%, and now we pay.
Last year we were paying, 16%, and now we're only paying 15.19.
And this is the difference between, okay.
Yeah.
Well, URS rates actually go up and down every year, right? Like what the city has to contribute, it all depends on how the fund looks, URS fund itself, basically. But this is the first time that Tier 2 employees now have to pick up a portion. And we already pick it up for public safety employees, but the state law does not allow us to pick it up for general employees. So what we've heard from a lot of cities is they're doing an increase to their employees to try to make up for this, at least as a one-time thing.
But please tell me it's our option, though, right?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
the
It's
reason
like the Utah State retirement system is going to tell us what we have to do.
Yeah, it was just
no,
it was just recommended.
it was
Yeah.
recommended by them.
Okay,
Um,
that totally makes
When we met, so high level, Ron asked me something right before the meeting started, and high level, the changes that you're seeing are either because we felt like a majority of the council in the meetings we met with you supported those changes, or there's a few other things. But the reason that this one got added in is, from my recollection, and tell me if we misunderstood any of you, all of you said that you would be okay with picking up this portion. So that's why it's in there. No, they encouraged us to, but it is not required.
So Aaron?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
So, I mean, this is not a huge deal for increased wages, but if you increase their wages, doesn't that increase their benefits? And then you have to
Technically,
make the
yes.
difference up again? I mean,
Technically,
how's that
yes.
work?
So
Aren't you
actually,
kinda
some
chasing your tail?
right. So 0.7%,
Uh-huh.
right, is the number. So if we increase by 0.7, they technically there's still going to be a gap there. So some cities are doing 1%, but we felt like 0.7 was fair because it's just a straight across. But you're
Okay.
right, we're not completely making them whole.
Okay.
It's generally a fairly small amount per paycheck for the employees, but definitely something that would be noticeable. We made some adjustments at the request of one of the council members. Just took a second look at the administrator allocations. So how we budget for salaries is those employees that are touching various different departments and funds, we budget directly out of those departments and funds for those employees by allocating percentages for how much time they spend in each of those areas. So our prior submittal to you was a little bit off with the administrator position, so we just took a second look and adjusted those. There's no increase or decrease overall for the city. It's just shifting around which departments and funds are paying. In community events and code compliance, we adjusted these wages. Events was a wage increase, and then code compliance was an hour increase. And then you can see the impact that had on the budget there. And then this is hot off the presses. We just a couple of days ago received our updated medical benefit bids. So just to fill you all in, our original renewal quote from our existing carrier was a 15% increase. So we instructed our benefits broker to go out and collect some additional bids from other carriers and see how we could improve on that. So we got multiple bids back for PEHP, Select Help, and then from UHC, our current carrier. UHC initially came back with the same 15%. Select Health came with just about under 10%, and PEHP was about 5%, but it wasn't really comparable plan to the other ones. It's less than what we currently have as far as medical coverage. So we again sent our brokers back and said, see what else you can get, if we can get even better. So they went back out. UHC came down to 10%, but Select Health came down to 4.65%. And so knowing that it is a challenge to switch and being aware of that and our employees, the impact it may have on them, financially, it makes sense for us to switch carriers to Select Health. And the amount that's in the budget currently reflects that.
So it's a negative. We're taking the cost down. Can you just share, just to remind myself and council, what percentage the city, I'm trying to think, is it like 95%?
95%. The city covers the premiums, and then the employees pick up 5%.
And then we have an HSA that also helps cover.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And with changing to a different provider, are there new costs, one-time costs associated with that we need to add in, or?
Nope. Yeah, the biggest concern will be people's deductibles. And so if you've already paid your entire deductible for the year before we switch, there's a mechanism that allows a credit for those that have done that on the new plan with the new carrier, which what we've been told is could be a little bit challenging to get processed and make everybody whole there. But it's something that's available that we plan to
So
take advantage of.
you're going to Select Health, but I'm sorry, remind me who you were with.
United Healthcare.
So United Healthcare it changes, does it change the hospitals?
No, it's a very comparable plan, which is why we felt okay about making the jump for our employees.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
So you see.
I had Select Health. It's actually good.
So David,
Yes.
what kind of deductibles then are people paying kind of an average? Does it change?
So our deductibles will remain the same.
I
as
know they
were.
remain the same, but what are they?
So the traditional plan, I believe, is a 1,000 individual, I think 2,000 family deductible. The high deductible plan is a 2,000, 4,000 plan.
Okay.
And then our out-of-pocket max is $8,000.
just out of curiosity, I guess, for some of us to kind of see what type of competitive we're getting. You know what, like a family, if you said, okay, we have a family plan, I don't know if it's a parent, a family with one, or what's that average going to come to, what that cost would be?
Yeah, so the way that we budget is we do for employees that are currently on staff, we do budget for what they currently have elected. If we have some vacant positions, we will budget for the highest plan in case that whoever
I mean, is
we
it
hire.
1,500 average a family, or what do you know what it might be?
I think he's talking about the monthly premiums.
Oh, got it.
And
Sorry,
I was
monthly premium.
trying to look that up for my pay stub,
Yeah.
unless you know it off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head. It definitely varies between traditional and high deductible, and whether it's single or double or
there's just
family,
too many
but anywhere from 900 to 2,000.
I'll look that up. One point of information too, so the city contributes toward, if the employees, which a majority of ours do select the high deductible health plan, it's significantly cheaper for for the city to pay into that kind of a plan. And so the city does contribute to an HSA to essentially make that up. So whether you select a traditional or an HSA plan, the city's basically contributing the same amount towards your health plan.
Is the provider network essentially the same? I think that's just one of the hard things about switching plans is you can't go to your,
The
Same
doctors
doctor.
you were used to, yes,
Okay.
the networks are the same.
Continuing on, additional changes, we added.
Can I ask one more
oh,
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Aaron, you said the city contributes how much to each HSA?
Is
Is
it
it
$3,000 over the course of the
1,500
year?
for an individual, 3,000 for a couple or family.
So it
And
looks like our health insurance premiums are okay, so I'm on the high deductible family plan. About $1,560 a month, probably. Was that be what that is? $1,560 per month. So the city does 95% of that. The employee picks up 5% of it.
And I'm a little older, I pay close to 2,000, and I have a $5,000. Now, so now, the one other thing, maybe the council might be interested in this information. If we have an employee that opts not to take the health insurance, I believe that they receive, is it 50% of the, or what's the amount?
It's approximately 50%, yeah, of a cash in lieu.
So if it was 1,500 for a family, they say, we've got coverage from another, if it be someone else in the family that has the health insurance, they then can take a cash of $750 a month. It saves the city, it also benefits them for not taking the benefit. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay.
So what percent, do you have kind of an idea how many do that?
It's not a large amount, it's just a handful of people. We could get you a specific number.
I
but-
don't have to know the specifics, I'm just curious.
I'll
Yeah,
text our HR manager and see if she knows off the top of her head by
Yeah,
chance.
I think maybe 7 to 8 people.
I've been there, and my employer did not cover it. I had my own coverage through my retirement, and I didn't get a dime. So I applaud the city for, it just makes sense. We're saving money, so let's give a little bonus to the employee. That's wonderful.
But you're
Any
not working
other-
there any longer.
Any other insurance questions before I move on to the next one? Okay. So we added in some software for human resources to provide some training. Through the trust, our insurance provider, our liability and property insurance, they have some trainings that we thought that we could utilize, but digging further into it, they're kind of basic. We want a little bit more in-depth and some more control over what we're providing to the employees for training. So we're just adding in this 3,000 for that. This is just budget moving from one place to another. Our appeal authority had previously been in the general fund, but with discussing with Rob and with Aaron, we felt that it was appropriate to move it into our new building and development fund. And so that we only had 1,500 budgeted in the general fund, which was probably a little bit low. And so we created this new account in the building and development fund and added 3,500. The revenues and the expenditures come at the same amount, so it's just about a pass-through, but not quite. We'll have a small amount of revenue from it, but.
Is that amount for administrative staff involvement in the appeal authority? 'Cause
So it's
everybody in
just for our contract with the appeal authority individually.
Oh, got it, okay.
And then we added in an additional Yard of the Month banner, small dollar amount. That was one of the requests of the council. And then this is a pretty significant one, decreases in our public safety costs due to some changes that were made to that budget by the Lone Peak Public Safety District Board at the time that they adopted their tentative budget, as well as the benefit changes, the medical benefit. They're on our same medical plan, and so the decreases that we're seeing are there as well. So pretty significant. You can see about $70,000 in police savings and just under $80,000 for fire. So great to see those come down a little bit further even. And then we increased our budget for our general plan. If you remember, we have $100,000 currently budgeted in fiscal year '24. We did put $20,000 more in the budget for FY25, but just wanted a little bit more cushion room in case the bids come in a little bit higher. So this would put it at $30,000, so an overall budget for the general plan of $130,000. Canterbury Trail budget. So we added this into our Parks Capital Fund. This is a developer project that will be doing the work, and then this would be our portion of a reimbursement to them.
Just to help us going forward, would you mind calling it the Foxwood Trail? There might be
Sure.
some other things to council we have to talk about that might be being called the camp.
Okay.
Does that-
Foxwood Trail, you
does that
got
make
it.
sense? So if we understand that,
Is it Fox Hollow or Foxwood?
Foxwood.
Foxwood, okay.
I think Fox, I understand, is it, as other discussions come about, so the council understands what we're talking
Yeah, I think we had gone through a couple different names when we were putting this together and didn't know what to call it, but that's,
Why don't we
Good
just call it
direction,
the Todd Train Trail? I like the 3 Ts.
So this is the one that does the connection. Yeah, okay.
And then finally, in our transportation fund, we did have budgeted $125,000 for a road fee study. This is not going to be necessary in FY25, so we're shifting that money from that to just our road projects budget. The amount that we put into the road fee projects is a little bit less than what was in the fee study, just because we also made a slight adjustment to revenues in that fund, that $10,000 difference. So we weren't able to put all of it into road projects, but most of it. Okay, that was all of the current changes that are in the version that you have. And then we have an additional list of potential changes that could still occur. First is we are still in the middle of our sewer fee study. This is for user rates. Really, because of the TSSD increase is what caused us to look at ours. What we're looking at is likely an increase to only the city portion of the sewer fees. The exact amount is still to be determined based on the study that we're doing. But any questions about that process or where we are?
When do you think we'll have the rate study?
I think we're pretty close. There's just a couple of questions that our consultant is.
So we're going to have
waiting
it for
answers
this year's budget, for sure.
Yeah, I think we plan to have it before the final budget adoption. Another potential change, the certified property tax rate, we won't have that until the first week of June. So depending on how that comes in, hopefully it's good news and we can increase our budget. But we have kept it flat just to be conservative for now. And then another potential change, we are also in the middle, almost toward the end of a wage study for market wage adjustments. As you recall, in the budget, we have a 5% increase built in. So depending on where that wage and market study comes in, hopefully it's within that 5%. If not, there's a potential that we could ask for something different, but that's not the plan.
So let me ask a question. The 5%, is that going to be a COLA
No,
or is it merit?
no, it's going to
both?
be based on the market study. So some, based on where they fall in the study, some people could see an adjustment, some will not.
Okay,
And so just for ease of budgeting, we budgeted as if everyone was getting a 5%, but that will be spread differently than that when the final study is finished.
so when the study's done, some people might get 2.5, some might get 7%, but it'll all even up to 5% in the overall budget, is that what you're saying?
That's what we're hoping, yes.
Okay.
So who's
I
conducting
would-
the study?
So we had a more thorough study done how long ago was it? 2 or 3 years ago?
3 years ago or so.
By Mike Swallow. He does these studies for multiple cities in the county and in the state. So he did a more in-depth study where he comes out and actually interviews the employees, and we review all of our
Job description.
job descriptions. That's the word. Thank you. And make sure that they have everything included and what qualifications are needed. And so this isn't that full process, but it's just kind of an update where we're taking all of our current ranges, comparing them to the ranges of similar positions within the county, and making adjustments based on that.
And I'm now going to be the conservative and asking, has this study ever come back showing that there should be decreases or, you know what I mean? Sometimes you choose the guy because he's going to be your guy for increase. Is he the guy that's level or is he, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard?
We've
I
never
understand-
decreased a wage. We have not given an increase, right? Basically, right? If the study comes back and says you are where you need to be based on the market and your experience, then people have not gotten an increase.
If somebody's performance measurements don't come out on par, do you still give them that market wage adjustment, or is it also based on performance as well?
We've also withheld if we had concerns about performance.
But we've also given bonuses where they're doing an excellent job. I mean, it goes both
Absolutely.
ways.
And if this does indeed come out at 5%, then I would like to talk about a 1% merit
Above the 5%.
above the 5%. That it is very concerning to me to not allow Erin and her staff to give raises to people who are performing exceptionally. I think having some merit, whether it's 0.5%, 1%, 1% comes to mind because that brings us even with the raises for police and fire. But just as a shot across the bow to folks, that if indeed that comes in at 5%, that's something that I'm going to want us to talk about.
Erin, haven't you historically, or am I misremembering, if you had your preference between a market adjustment and, I'm so tired, I'm sorry, what's the other word?
Merit.
Merit, yeah. What would you choose?
In my perfect world, I would do both. So my perfect world I would do a market adjustment and then be able to do merit for high performers. But I feel like it's absolutely necessary at a minimum to do a market adjustment.
It's certainly the priority. The problem that I've seen with merit adjustments is how it's implemented and how it's measured. It has to be measurable objectives. It has to be outcome oriented. There's a lot of work that goes into merit adjustments. If you're going to go down that path, you have to be 110% in to do it right. Because if you get into a merit adjustment system and somehow things fall through the cracks, you've done more harm than good.
Absolutely. And I've shared this with council in the past. In prior years, pre-COVID, we were only doing merit adjustments. So there was a 3% budgeted for merit, but because there was no market adjustment, merits were treated like markets. They were, or like COLAs, more or less, right? Very few people actually did not get a full merit because that was the only option for an increase that employee had. I completely agree with you, Councilmember Campbell, and it's been on my bucket list to redo our evaluation process to simplify it a little bit so that I can be very objective with this, right?
For the market adjustment, are you aiming then for average?
Yes.
The last one on our potential changes still to come is election. So we had an amount already in there, thinking that it would possibly be used for referendum. But now that's not happening, but we have school district stuff. So we're keeping that budget in there for now, pending.
We like to make
Decisions.
things easy for you guys. You're welcome.
So
Right.
Yeah.
now, is this for the election? This is November election? This is
Yes.
not- Okay.
Yep.
So now, let me ask you, to help me understand. So I understand the referendum was kind of a city situation. If it's a district situation, meaning even if it's our interlocal, will the county look to us then to pay for election?
We're
Rob-
still
Rob was a
Go
little
ahead.
unsure, honestly. It's not super clear, and so we just decided it would be best to leave it in. We doubt that it'll be the full amount, but it would be better to have it than not.
Because there will also be an added election then the next year.
Yes.
Oh,
The school board,
For
then it would
school
be a
board.
school
You're
board
right.
election. So it'd be good to know if that's something that we'll need to include next year also.
that actually will be part of this budget. So we have to be careful that this goes, remember, this budget's from here to then. If there's a special election called in March or June, it's in this budget. I know, I understand the nuance. I mean, it all moved on us in the last couple of days.
So can I just clarify something about the certified tax rate? My understanding is that, as in what I've observed over the years, if property values are assessed higher by the county, then the certified tax rate drops
yes.
because they basically want to make sure you get your recent historic property tax, and the way you grow there is with growth.
Yep.
Okay, but I've always noticed that too, that there's always just a little bit of wiggle room. It's like it's designed just to give you just a little bit more. I've never seen it go underneath. But, so I'm not sure that that changes the calculations a lot, does it? I mean, we just don't know. Do we have kind of an idea how much property tax we collected in November and December? I would think most of it would be in, except for the delinquent.
Yeah, we do, and we can take another look at that number, but we will know, for sure, first week of June, what it's going to be.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we didn't mess too much with it just because it's a lot of work to try and estimate what that growth component is going to be, and just used our time elsewhere and relying on the county to do those calculations and give us that number. But yeah, you're right. We plan to and hope to see some type of an increase from the growth that we know has happened.
In addition to the growth, there is some minor adjustments that could take place depending on our property values versus other property values in the county and how we relate to them. If we're above average, we will see an increase. If we're below average, we'll see a decrease. So, and there's two variables. One is comparison to other areas, and the other is the growth.
Yeah, and one thing I have seen too that's more rare, but it does happen, it happened in Vineyard while I was there, is if there's an appeal on any properties, that can it can hit into your property tax revenues. So it's a little bit more, it's definitely more stable than sales tax, but there are still things that can happen that can chip away at it. So.
I want to appeal through our previous mayor.
Say that one more time. Oh, the appeal is, yeah.
Okay. I'm out of luck.
All right, this last category we have is items that we wanted to bring up for council discussion and hopefully some direction or decisions. First is the Alpine Highway fence. And just a note that this will be an agenda item in the May 7th meeting. So you don't necessarily need to have all of your discussion tonight and make a decision tonight, but just something to keep in mind. We've brought this up before, but our legislative consultant contract, it's currently in the budget in our culinary water fund. So just the question of whether we want to continue that contract or not. And then use of net revenues. We do currently in our general fund have a net revenue of about $297,000. So some of that could be used as well as additional fund balance. So just some ideas of things that could be used for if you chose to. Power conduits for lights at Mountain Ridge Park would cost approximately $100,000. These, of course, are just estimates. The maintenance building at Mountain Ridge Park, about 200,000. Highland Boulevard matching. So if you remember, we have a portion of the matching in the budget, $450,000. This would be the other half to have a full match for that project.
So the maintenance building, you believe, will increase, was it 1.8 we already have there, Andy?
You mean as far as what we funded or the expenses, or I'm not?
Well, I think you're adding in here, it says an add of another 200,000, is that correct?
No, this
Right,
is the
what we
Mountain
funded
Ridge
the other
Park.
Oh,
day
Mountain Ridge,
did-
I'm sorry, that's your maintenance building, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the maintenance.
I just kept thinking the maintenance building.
For the legislative consultant contract, I know did we do 100,000 last year?
Mhm.
And then how much did he bring in for us?
$1 million.
No,
Uh,
that
a
was the
year
before.
ago.
Last
So
year.
Before.
Andy and I had a conversation with him this afternoon to see where he was at, because unfortunately the grant he was hoping for did not come through. At this point, the one he is pursuing, we won't know until about mid-June. We are obligated to fund his contract through September, because we have an annual contract with him, so we do need to, I mean, depending on what council decides, we do need to fund at least a few months of it, but we won't know for sure whether or not he's secured a grant for us until about mid-June.
We,
Wait, so
We've
we
been
need to
paying him out
continue
of-
paying more
Like
money
also-
for him?
We've been
Until
paying-
September, because we entered an annual contract with him, and it expires in September.
we've been paying him out of the water fund.
We begin the contract in September, so we're obligated for the next, it's 100,000 total, what is it, $8,700 a month?
Oh, okay, we're paying it monthly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
monthly. That's why it goes through September. You'll have 2 or 3 months that you're gonna have to have in this new budget. And then it would be up to the council if, like I said, has not performed at this time, hoping to perform, we'll see.
That'll be an easy decision.
You think?
I don't want Kim to be right, I said that.
That's right. Why don't you want me to be right, Ron? Give
On
me
this,
one.
okay, Kim, on this one issue, I don't want to cost the city 100,000 to have you be right.
I would feel horrible.
I know.
Well, I agree, but if by chance, like last year, he gets $1 million grant, then it's a different
Oh, I agree.
discussion topic. If he doesn't, then we don't want to keep doing it.
In my
for sure.
conversation with him, we had it in March, there wasn't MAG, so I'll see him on Thursday night also. And we're talking about David Stewart.
Yes,
He was waiting for the legislators to kind of come through and see all the different bills, how they allocated the money. Was why I think now he's going, okay, now I know what they've done with different projects or how they funded things. Now I'll go after that funding. At least, is that kind of consistently what we've been hearing, Andy and Aaron?
We spoke with him today, and he's an optimist. That's what he's in the business to be. But yeah, he's working on something. He knows we want the $1 million for the water, and he's quite optimistic that he'll be able to report good things to us in June.
Are you optimistic?
I'm not going to gamble on that. We'll see. But he was encouraging. Talking to him was encouraging. So I'll say it that way. It was encouraging talking to him.
so it's always going to be
Like I
impossible.
said, he's an optimist, but it was encouraging. It was encouraging talking to him, and I felt better after talking to him. So we'll see. The proof is in the performance.
So Kim?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? I know he's going to say something. So I think from previous discussions, your feeling is that we could maybe do this totally in-house. We wouldn't need to have,
I mean, you can
Lobbyists.
contract out to
Uh-huh.
a grant writer for, $5,000 to $7,000 per grant, kind of thing like that. So, I mean, I think 100,000 is excessive. Most cities either have an in-house grant writer or can contract it out. And there's so many resources out there for technical resources for writing your own grant. I mean, I can just go on my funding portal. These are the grants for the projects we're looking for. They're available. Okay. These are 6 that I think are going to be ones that we can really go after and apply to the projects that we actually need, not projects that we're kind of making up to match a grant. And then from there, either you can do it in-house or you can contract it out for a pretty nominal fee.
so that's kind of what you're saying would be a better way to go.
Yeah. I mean, I feed Brooklyn grants. There's, you know, natural resources. There is one for a farmer's market. There's, you know, one for general plan. There's lots of grants out there. It's just, it's easy to filter through them and find them. And then, you know, the process of applying for them is the pain, and then reporting in compliance.
So you're finding these kind of through state, federal?
Yeah, there's a whole funding portal on our on the governor's website where you can actually filter through and say, I'm a local government, I want a grant for water infrastructure, and it'll show you all the grants available. You know, you can do for economic development, nonprofit, so it's all there in one easy website application.
So let me ask, you know, Kim, you have more experience in this, and this is probably why you voted no. But one of the reasons when we were talking about doing this with a lobbyist, we felt like maybe there were contacts. And I know this last time you said, hold it, I think anyone can maybe go get that. A grant writer, you're submitting, if you meet the criteria, you kind of follow in. Where a lobbyist is kind of lobbying
for the money.
Moving around and negotiating. I mean, it's relationship-based versus an application-based. Do you see those being successful? Are you seeing other cities be successful using a lobbyist versus a grant writer? I mean, I think that's where we have to kind of.
Well, I'll be honest, ULCT is the best lobbyist you're going to get. I mean, they do an amazing job.
They don't get us grants, do they?
Yeah, I mean, ULCT goes out and makes legislation that match projects that cities are working on.
I mean, you know, one we didn't get that I was really frustrated about, and this was with MAG, and that we didn't get anything for our general plan. Most other cities got something from our general plan. And now, our grant writer, do you know who our grant writer is in the city? Our best grant writer? It's Mr. Spencer.
It's Andy.
Spencer.
Yeah.
And Andy, I think you helped write some. But
I failed on that one.
Well, but when you say failed, it was just a criteria. But I was really surprised we didn't get any nugget of $20,000 or $40,000, because other cities have been getting something for that. And I guess that's something I've got to advocate and go and kind of do better down there at MAG. But I was really kind of surprised.
And you can actually use MAG. So MAG has the LAA, and they have a full-time employee as well that is supposed to do grant writing for cities.
So I've got a question. MAG hires David Stewart.
Not for grant writing.
They have grant writing, but they hire a lobbyist.
Yeah.
It's David Stewart.
Yeah. But they have
That's how our reference came in.
That's through MAG?
Yeah, so I mean, if you really want grant writing, MAG is supposed to be doing that for us as well.
And that's a good learning moment.
So did you know that, Mayor? Well, you're on the MAG board. Did you know that they'd do grant writing
That's
first?
why we thought we'd get something for our general plan. Is
Okay.
that I'd seen them awarding to other cities. And I think what happened is it's the year timing. I think, we are now trying to push it this year. If it was probably when a lot of COVID money was out there, I think they were using it, part of different plans that you craft and say, okay, we're programming parks, that COVID money. And I think, some of that's drying up. That's what I'm saying.
Well, there's a decrease in funds right now. So, I mean, even David Stewart, it was very easy to go after any water infrastructure money because it was a hot topic item. And so when you say, I'm going to go get $1 million, well, yeah, I mean, that's available for all the cities. And it's one that is very easy to go after because it's almost like legislators are trying to hand it out, especially with your federal funding. But this year, I mean, there wasn't a lot of leftover money to go after. So that was the hard part is, I mean, David was hoping that there'd be a bigger pot of money, but in the end, I mean, we didn't have really any wiggle room.
Well, I just like to say I'm pretty open on this discussion. I just want to hear all sides of the argument. I mean, it'll be kind of hard not to renew if he comes in with a big $1 million grant, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
I think the hard thing will be is we have to, between now and that, is it the third week in June we're passing this?
The 18th, I believe.
Yeah, so you're not wrong. I mean, and so council can either pull it out and we could amend, or you could leave it in. I mean, because we won't know. So if you're not quite ready to make that decision, I mean, we certainly need a budget pass. So maybe you pull it out and then we add it back in if you make that decision,
Or you
or
keep
vice
it in
versa,
and you
you
always
leave
have
it
extra
in
money.
and you can pull it out or change it to a general grant writer instead. Just up to council what your final decision. So right now it is in the culinary budget to stay there. So we just need direction if you want it to not be in. And I mean, tonight, you don't have to make the final decision. I mean, even next Tuesday is tentative still, but by June 18th, of course, is final budget.
Excuse me. So on the maintenance building at Mountain Ridge Park, you want that, of course, they're going to be doing all this other construction. It would seem like that maintenance building would be one of the last things you would do because you need that open area to go in and do construction. Am I mistaken? Or do you think it ought to be built right now? I know
Well-
you need the storage, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, you can phase anything, right? We were gonna use it kind of as a platform to, connect some of the additional security cameras and some of those things, and so it would be helpful to have it go in now. But
You're just
But
saying
we
with
could-
the second phase.
the
right?
second phase, right? Because we were gonna, some of the conduits and wiring, et cetera, for the cameras, we were gonna, base them out of that because it was in the, future area, it was in the still being constructed area. So anything can be phased. One of the important things of the maintenance building is really the events. The events is a big part of it, and so it's just, it facilitates the events, but that ultimately, it's going to come down to pick 'em, right? As far as, what we can afford first and, with the extra money that we generate. But the maintenance building, I think, is a critical part of the park and the ultimate plan of the park. And like I said, I think it's a critical part of the events because it just gives them a base of operations to then, store materials and it's kind of it seems like a simple thing, but it's a big deal to oh, now we need this for this event, now we need this for this event. You run over to the storage building, you grab it, you have it all staged there. It facilitates the events a lot, but ultimately, we're gonna have to make some decisions on
So let me
what
ask you,
goes first, right?
David and Aaron, when do you want us just to be aware that these are going to be coming up on May 7th? Or are you looking for input tonight?
on whether
Is
to
this
put them
more
in
of
the
just a
budget.
presentation saying, hey, this is what we need to get decisions on, or do you want information tonight?
We'll take either one. If you're ready, great, but if not, no, we will ask you that question. Or,
On the Alpine fence?
No, well,
no,
okay.
not on Alpine Fence,
yeah.
because that decision, I think you certainly need more information about. But if you want to see something different, come to you on Tuesday night, tell us now. We don't, and I mean, another option, honestly, you don't have to use the net revenue. We can have $290,000 of net revenue. These are just some higher level priorities we've heard council discuss that are currently not in the budget, and so we wanted to present them as an option for you if you wanted to.
So now, let me ask you, this Highland Boulevard matching increase is not in the budget?
Half of the match is. We were hoping that the other half we could either work through for a grant, honestly, or space it over 2 fiscal years. Otherwise, we were going to have to use fund balance, just depending on how the construction timing and everything went.
I haven't heard any more from D.R. Horton since we all had the meeting here 6 weeks ago, but I assume that's because they're off and working on their plans, et cetera, and so they could walk through the door tomorrow and say, hey, we got our plans ready, we're ready to go, or they could delay. I just really don't know where they are. But we've tried to be prepared that, if they came and said, you've got to pay your portion, that we could at least pay half in this coming year. But they had told us, as we were conversing with them over the several months leading up to, the decisions that were made, they had told us that they wanted to begin building infrastructure this year on this phase. You've noted, as you go over there, you'll note that they built a lot of the core infrastructure for kind of that stuff that's west of Texas Instruments. And it looks like to me, just, casual observer, that they're getting ready to open that phase for sales. And so I'm assuming that that's going to be their pattern here. And so after they get their core infrastructure built on that west, they'll turn to this east area. But we just don't know their timing, so we're just trying to be prepared for whatever that means, when they come.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but I guess the question is do we need to pass this as part of the budget, or could this be something that we do a budget adjustment later in the year for when we actually know exact fees, but we should be aware that's coming, because we do have, according to page 4 here, we do have some budget surplus. and different things that we can use later on. And of course, we want to keep as much surplus as we have, but at the same time, that's my question. Do we need to put that in the budget right now, or can we do adjustments during the year? Because it seems like we really don't know how much it's going to cost us.
Yeah, we don't know the exact cost right now. We're just going off a rough estimate, and we don't know the exact cost. So where we've got some baseline money in the budget, at least in my opinion, that's a decision to fund the rest of it, because this means the rest of it. We've estimated that our total contribution could be as high as 900,000. So, we've got 450 in the budget right now. We could wait to decide to fund the rest of it once we knew the exact cost and the exact.
Sure. So on this emergency manager storm drain employee, don't we need them?
We do.
I mean, shouldn't that be part
Yeah,
of the budget?
so I have a couple more to add. So
Yeah.
this one.
Oh, there's more?
There's
Oh,
a couple more.
Okay, I thought we were done.
I was just letting you guys talk. So this one, if you remember, we had our priorities from the retreat. This was one of the ties for priority 11. So it was just cut out before our previous version of the budget. So that is a potential that we could use some of our net revenues for, estimated about 105,000. The other one that
My
was brought up by,
recollection is that the Alpine Highway Fence and the emergency manager storm drain employee were the two tied at 11 that didn't
Yeah.
make the cut.
Yeah.
Is that?
correct. Another one that was brought up by a council member was additional funding for the traffic calming toolbox. I don't have a set dollar amount. It would just be whatever you all feel comfortable or think that it needs in addition to what's already there. And then I would just also add to this list, it's not on the slideshow, but Councilmember Courtney's idea of a 1% merit is another potential use of that net revenue. Aaron did a quick calculation. We think it would be around $40,000. I believe that is citywide and not just general fund. So the general fund portion of that would be lower, but 40,000.
Yeah, so it's usually, we're about 50-50 other funds to general funds, so it'd probably be about 20,000 in the general fund. That's very rough, me doing it right here, right now.
And then to give you some more information that might help you in your decision making, Aaron asked me to throw in some calculations on the impact that use of our fund balance or that net revenue would have on the fund balance reserve. So as you recall, 35% is the maximum we're allowed to keep in our general fund reserves. If we go over that, we're required to transfer a portion into a capital projects fund to keep the general fund balance under 35%. If
we
we
could transfer like that 450 into the hold as a holding place to see what the cost comes in, and that would bring us down.
We could, yeah. So I threw out a couple of examples. If we didn't use any of our fund balance, so this is not what's currently showing in the budget because we do have some fund balance budgeted for that Highland Boulevard match. But if we were to take that out and not budget any fund balance, we would estimated, emphasis on estimated because it is a fluid thing, but 43-ish% is what we would end the fiscal year at. If we add that in, what we currently show in the budget in front of you, we would end with about a 39, almost 40% fund balance. If we were to add in some of those additional items and we're increasing the amount we're using to 890,000, that would take us to 36. We're still above the maximum we're allowed to have. And then I threw in the ultimate if we were to do, I think I'm missing one. This is the amount that would get us pretty close to that 35% if we were to use just over $1 million in fund balance. And then I think my last one's not going to show up on here, but if we, I don't know why that's not showing up. I'll have to get you the number, but if we were to do just about everything that we talked about tonight, it would take us down to around 32 to 33% fund balance.
So here, we don't have to spend money, meaning that
Right.
sometimes also we feel like, oh, I've got the fund balance, I got to bring it down, so I've got to go spend money. We can cut taxes, we can allocate to other projects. Yeah, it just goes.
We can move it into a capital fund.
Yeah, we can move it into capital fund. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that you were going to say something.
No, I just am, I'm puzzled at the 43%. Did we have a lot of capital moved into the general fund
So the
in the
reason
current
this
fiscal year?
The reason this happens is that the calculation that the state uses for your fund balance maximum uses your current year revenues. And so you take the balance that's in your reserves divided by your current year revenues, and it's that percentage that can't go over 35%. So if you have a fiscal year where you have some unique revenues or some one-time revenues that you don't typically see, like a lot of grants, for example, that's going to increase that revenue number and therefore decrease the percentage. And so the dollar amount of fund balance you'd be allowed to keep would be higher in that year. But in the next year, if you're not budgeting or expecting to receive those same grant funds or any unusual funds, then it then decreases the dollar amount we're allowed to keep. So that's the reason why we anticipate ending fiscal year 24 with such a high fund balance, because we had some additional grant revenues that.
Okay, so it was grants rather than transfers in, or, okay.
Yep.
So, just to be clear, the grant revenues then are not calculated part of the 35%.
They are part of the revenue portion of that
Right.
calculation.
They are. And then, so when we have the one-time money, even though it's not going to go year to year, that one-time money will impact our fund balance that we're able to keep.
Correct. Yep.
And it forces us to put it into other, or
Yep.
spend it, but
But
Move
I
it.
just want to just make a comment historically. So for years and years, the maximum we could have was 25%.
Yep.
The 35% has just been the last 3 years, hasn't it, Mayor? Yeah, and so, we've still got quite a bit in that fund balance. I mean, we always need it for emergencies and snow plows and contingency funds and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's just recently that it's been 35%, so.
Yeah, it moved it up. And I think some of it is just because I think the reason the state did that is because you do so much work with roads and it depletes, or, you might have expenses in certain times of the year and then it brings it down the other way. It's just kind of for cash flow. Make sure you have.
Yeah, and like we said, it doesn't mean that we have to spend all the money. You can move some of that money into a capital fund and then save it for a project to use it later. Like the mayor said, there's other options like reducing taxes or fees that would also reduce that surplus that we're showing currently. But and then just a note, 5% is the minimum. So definitely don't recommend approaching that ever, but the state does set that as the minimum we're allowed to have or need to have in our reserves.
Well, thank you. Is there other things we're needing? I think you had just a.
The only other thing is just going over the remaining budget calendar, just so you're aware of what's coming up. So next Tuesday, a week from tonight, we will have a public hearing and hopefully adoption of our tentative budget. By code, we're required to adopt a tentative budget the first meeting in May. And then the next day, we plan on having a city open house. Hopefully the budget will be interesting to people that come, but there will be a lot of other fun things for them to come and look at and see as well. And then a week after that, we will do our community budget presentation. And then June 18th is the planned final budget adoption. And then just a reminder of, this is cut off as well, I apologize, but some of the things that will be included in that June 8th meeting, multiple public hearings for enterprise fund transfers, any city officer compensation changes with that new law that was passed, adoption of the final budget, adoption of the certified tax rate, adoption of a consolidated fee schedule. We're working on changes to that now. And then I don't recall what the very last item was, but multiple things that we will be talking about and doing in that June 8th meeting. So that was everything I have. So yeah, if there's any more discussion, any questions for Aaron or myself.
Anything else? You guys want to go back to the decision aspects, or is that something, hey, now I'm aware of it, I'll come more prepared on Tuesday discussion, or would you like to spend time discussing that?
And I can send this presentation to each of you too, so you have that list.
Yes, thank you. And I'd just like to make a general comment, and I expressed this the other day, but I've seen a lot of city budgets. This is the best format, it's the best organized, it's the best presented that I've ever seen, and I just wanted to thank you very much.
And did you
And thanks
notice
for
you
putting
now
it
have a
up.
table of contents?
Yes, I
There is a
was
table
going to
of
comment on the
contents.
table of
Page
contents.
numbers.
Yeah, first thing.
And
So thanks to Erin as well. She's been a
And
huge
I like
help in
the
putting it
summaries
together.
because I'll be honest, in years past, it's been hard as council members because I repeatedly have asked for it. But we oftentimes, and I know it's just a snapshot in time, but we've often really struggled with how much we're in reserves, how much we're in the funds. And you've got it clearly presented. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aaron. I know you played a big role in this, and thanks to all the staff.
Yep.
And, I had very few questions about Andy's part because I thought it was well done.
Well, I also tell you thank you, David. I mean, for being your first year, you think there'd be a little bit more now. And I didn't see in here the one that I always worry about are the accounts that we don't know there's money in. I remember sitting down and also
Yeah,
I'd like to see where that Wild Rose.
After that comment in the previous meeting, I did take a quick look at some of those accounts, and they've all been zeroed out as far
Like
as I
your
can tell.
exaction fee for the town center, your Wild Rose Park, is it,
Yeah.
We had the landscaping up there by the weir. Seriously, when we start finding, going, what, we've had money just sitting here that we haven't spent, and also you start to find out, going, I think at the time we had like $500,000 or just sitting in all these accounts and if you're open, some of it, we could use it hadn't been used, but I also get worried that's where if someone's not watching it, those are the accounts where some risk are at.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, those have all been utilized in various areas, and there's not money just sitting out there that we don't know about. I'll continue to dig into that, and if I find anything, I'll let you
It
know.
might be nice to see how we transferred and where it went. I know we were talking, but now say, hey, this is where that went. The weir money that we had, the $100,000 landscape that was paid, this is how, and I think we were allocating a lot to the Mountain Ridge Park. That was where a lot was supposed to get, we're going, okay, we can, use that. I think all of us, that were around, and I know Doug, you were attending meetings, that you probably heard some of those. The Wild Rose money is still supposed to be somewhere, that Wild Rose Park, because we have not done anything there.
It got moved into Parks Capital, so it is there. One thing David and Andy and I are going to do is take a strong look at Parks Capital in the coming month and just make sure that everything that should have been transferred to get to Mountain Ridge has been transferred, and that we're, setting aside Wild Rose and, going back to impact fees, making sure we can make the bond payments and seeing how building permits are doing. So we'll do a report to council on that shortly.
Well, as we get ready for our budget open house, is it next week? Yeah, it's next Wednesday. You're saying there might be we had that citizen budget, which I think we all love, that came out right at the fling time. Are we, I understand that you have this, I think the anticipation is trying to have something similar to that, is that right?
Yeah, so we'll have some boards set up for the open house
Well,
with some of those charts and information.
Yeah,
that
the pie
residents can
charts
come
you
look at.
showed right at the first would be
Yeah.
excellent.
Yep.
Those were, I think, from a citizens budget standpoint, those pie charts are more useful than the pie charts that were in the citizens budget last year.
Okay, great.
So that'll be less work, but I think that'd be great. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So let me ask one general question, and this goes to you and Andy and Aaron. Do we have enough money budgeted to build the park maintenance building at the community center? Because we've been talking about that park maintenance building for 11 years now. And I think we need to build it if we can. So what's
Good news is the architect finally got me the bid plans today. So we're going to start putting it out to bid tomorrow. So we'll know in about three and a half weeks, something like that. We moved, we have right now approximately 1.8 and a half, something like that in there. And then we moved the rest of the open space money there. So we were sitting more like 2.2 million, something like that. I can't remember, it was 300,000 or 400,000. So that's about where we are, is somewhere in the $2.2 to $2.3 million for that parks maintenance building. But yeah, so I was grateful and relieved to get the plans today, and so yeah, we're ready to go out to bid, and so we're going to get it out on the streets. So hopefully I can answer that with a little more finite determination about three and a half weeks from now.
Okay, great. One other question I have for Aaron. I haven't been in the community center for a little while. Do we have the new flooring in and the paint?
Yes. Last I heard, there were a few last touches that needed to happen on flooring, like the main floor had been done, but they were still waiting to go down the stairs. So I haven't followed back up on that, but the paint and a majority of the flooring is done. And then a council member recently donated a portion of their funds, their council allocations, to help redo the stage as well, to kind of improve the look there as well. So we're making some progress there.
Did
So-
they end up putting the carpet up the wall?
I believe we did that one section because that's where we stacked the chairs against, was ultimately the concern. So you do new paint and then
It does,
you scuff it up.
does dramatically affect the acoustic.
And
We were-
the Arts Council is still not particularly happy about that, but what I have heard is that it's not as bad as they expected it to be.
So maybe, one thing is we talk about budgets, maybe they would be good. We have like an allocation for the councils. Maybe it'd be good for them to get, hey, yours has been spent or yours is not as we come towards the end of the year. If they don't need to, but they could, the question is, I guess, the council would have to decide if it would be okay if a council member to carry it over the next year, or we'll just grab it and take it away. But I'm just saying, that's something the council, that's kind of a decision. You want to carry if you had a budget, and this budget's to be used in something for the city that you kind of had on things.
Any leftover budget goes to Christmas lights.
I think you guys already spent it. I think you guys did that this last year.
No,
Well,
there-
yes, but next year. So we actually have budget in this coming year to replace the Christmas lights. So at this point, you don't need to spend your money that way unless you want us to add more
Right,
Christmas
that's
lights.
That's something that's kind of new, and it's been, like, if you see something going on that you, hey, this needs to be helped, and they sit down. We're talking, I think each of us have $3,000, which, Doug-
Nobody has spent theirs other than the one council member I spoke about, who allocated half of theirs to the Arts Council. So the rest of you have $3,000 still.
Now, is that $3,000 out of budget 24 or 25?
Correct.
Out of
This current
24, so this last one or the new one?
the
Both.
current year and then the new year will be, we have it in the same budget.
Oh,
Now, it's to be used somewhere in the city. You can't use it,
I had one question. You had the budget item, I think that was my request, for the traffic calming stuff. I would be interested in knowing, Andy, like, what is a suggested amount? Like, how much can we, I guess I would like some options as far as how much, because that was pretty open-ended. And I don't know how much stuff costs as much.
And as he's kind of complaining that, one thing we had is I think it was this current year or last year, was we bought that traffic calming toolbox with our budget. And
You also paid this last year for the current year for the speed tables.
so
You know,
those are out. We are going to have, since it's part of the budget and you're asking about the traffic calming, we are going to have a sign go up to get feedback. We just, like the speed bumps, I can't. Yeah, but they'll have a place to give it.
so have we had any feedback on the speed bump?
Yeah, lots.
And
They all hate it.
Speed bumps, not surprisingly, are very divisive. People often don't sit on the fence with them. They either love them or they hate them, and we've had feedback from both. Quite expressive feedback from both. So what we want to do is we're going to put out the sign that's going to solicit people to take the survey, and then we're going to send out the survey to the residents, and it's basically a 5-question survey. I don't remember it verbatim, but here's the 5 questions. Are you a resident of Highland? Do you live near the trial program or pilot speed table? How would you rate it, 1 to 10? Should we keep it? And would you want one like that on roads you drive frequently? Those are the 5 questions.
When you say speed table, I think we got to say speed bump, because I wouldn't know what that wording is if I
Okay.
wasn't on the council.
So if we said speed bump, change that to speed bump.
I do
Yeah.
understand.
You think people
If you
understand
use that
speed bump or-
terminology, I'm going,
Yeah.
what are they talking about? Is
Yeah.
that the sign that activated?
Yeah.
It's just, if
Yeah.
you said bump, I go, oh, I remember that bump on
Yeah.
Canal Boulevard.
But they are dramatically different than the old speed bumps that were made out of asphalt. Just a little
Well, these are
rounded thing.
temporary. These are temporary.
No, I understand that, but one thing that I noticed that I went over it, I was quite surprised how dramatic it was. If I
Only-
go through the speed tables, bumps, coming down to the Highland City, They're maybe 4 or 5, 6 inches above. This looked like it was 8 or 9.
This one's only 4 inches at the height.
That's only 4 inches?
The temporary one's 4 inches
It
at the
felt
highest.
like considerably
Yeah.
more.
A
How
little bit
fast are you driving, Ron?
The,
I got 10 feet of air.
so some of the differences on this, with it being temporary, like when they're done out of concrete, you roll onto it and it's smooth. This has a 1-inch lip, kind of like your driveway, because they can't really build the rubber
Of course,
to,
yeah.
to a little teeny pie wedge. So that's some of the differences. You feel that 1 inch. I know that seems odd, but you do feel that 1 inch. The other difference is typically when we'll build them out of concrete, we do that approach wing, if you will, 7 feet long. This approach wing is more like 3.5 to 4 feet. So it's a
Between
little more,
all of that,
a little more
there's a
abrupt
dramatic
on the
difference.
slope. But yeah, the
I
actual
just
height
drove over
of them.
this one tonight coming in, and I,
Which one are
was
you
trying to
talking about?
compare it. Just driving straight down to get to this building.
He's talking about
by
the
the
crowns on the crosswalks. The crosswalks on Town
The
Center Boulevard
crosswalks are a
kind
speed table.
of crowned. They're just a little mini speed table. They're
It's
only
an-
about an inch and a half.
But I'm wondering if something like that is more acceptable, because we're kind of doing what appears to me to be the most dramatic. It's steeper.
We're doing what was
higher.
cheap.
Well, it's just,
What's that?
we're actually doing the best one we could find that was temporary. I mean, we looked at some, looked around to find them, and we liked this one best. But,
Yeah.
yeah, for example, if you go to the ones that are behind Lone Peak, those are actually like 8 inches tall. They're actually substantially taller than this one is. And you're welcome to come up. We have one more that's going to go
Well, I've
in.
gone over it a number of times, and each time I go over it, I'm going, wow, this is pretty dramatic.
I had the different experience. I was actually on the phone with Andy because we were trying to see where it was at, and he says, okay, go over it at 20 miles an hour. So I'd go past it at 20. It wasn't as bad as I thought, but I actually went, I actually stopped there. I sat there and I said, I'm going to watch to see if cars, see what we're doing, will they stop, how fast? And it did depend. I mean, some just kind of, they thought their car could take it a little faster and they kind of keep going, and others almost come to, some come complete stop, they go over, and then they go. And some residents will love that. I've gotten texts, or some that are close by going, thank you, we're seeing the close. Some, I have a question, and I know we're talking about the budget. I'm sorry we kind of digressed on that. Is there a reason we have it so close to 6,000 West?
Yeah, that was
versus
my
a little bit-
question too.
A little bit further in? Why is it so close there?
You don't want to put it on the curve. So what we had to find is you have to find a place that's, with this temporary especially, you want to have it away from an intersection. And so you've got an intersection, we were looking for places between intersections and not on the curve. We don't want to have it go around the curve. I don't want to have somebody navigating the curve and the speed table all at the same time, right? And so we looked for places that were fairly near the curve, away from the intersection. You can put them at the corner of the intersection, but it introduces one more dynamic there. And so for these temporaries, the other one is planned for just the other side of the curve as you go eastbound, and you just come out of the curve and you kind of get on the straightaway. It's planned for the property line that's, after the curve. We try to put them on property lines. We try to put, where we can and where we have a choice, we try to put anything that's obtrusive, fire hydrants, power poles, traffic signs, speed tables, on property lines, so they're as far away from somebody's front door as they can be, and so that the two neighbors share the load equally. This one's slightly off-center because when we got over there, the post office or the developer had the same idea, and the mailbox is right on the property line.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But so we were looking for a place that's in a straightaway, fairly close to the curve, not right at the corner for this trial run, and so that's that's where kind of the locations fell out. So as you come out of the curve going eastbound, about 300 or 400 feet, there's a property line that's on kind of an angle. The fence runs on an angle. That's where we're planning to put the other one. We're just
So if if the people decide they just really hate this speed table, I mean, obviously, you can't turn it back to the company. Could we use it as part of the ninja course?
We could put it on our trails.
But,
Yeah.
I'm real open-minded about the ninja course. If other people are open-minded about some things I like.
Anyway, that's kind is there any other budget questions, or do we, once again, I'm going to come back. There were some items about discussion. Would you like just to have that on Tuesday, or would you like to go through some of it?
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry, Andy, how many applications have you gotten for the traffic calming?
so I have there is 4 total formal applications for the traffic calming program. We're in various stages of working on the 4. But as the council finished the manual, you said now start to chip away at the ones that weren't exactly formal requests for the traffic calming program. And so we've been working on those, but actual people that paid their $25 and signed up and turned it in, 4.
Do you know where those are?
Yep, I do. So one is on 6,000 West by Highland Elementary. One is up near Beacon Hills Boulevard on Park West Drive. One,
There really is a Park West Drive?
No, up
Yeah.
in Beacon Hills?
yeah.
I thought it was Angel Gate, or Angel.
The one that I got, the one that I received was from, funny enough, I have those up right now. I can tell you. Right here. The citizen that submitted that one was Aaron Barton. And it's Park West, not West Park. Yeah, Park West and Shepherd's Road, but it's kind of the road that's adjacent to Beacon Hills. And I was having a hard time understanding that one at first, but I believe what she's noting is that people are cutting off of 11 to 800 North and kind of making their way through the neighborhoods, as an alternative route to Beacon Hills Road. So
It is the alternative route. That's the
Yeah.
problem with that section.
Yeah.
Looking at it on the map, I thought, how could that be the main route? But no, they're turning left
Uh,
and going over into Alpine.
they're kind of, they're making their way through the neighborhoods. It took me a while to understand that one too. And then I had one that was submitted by Kendall Thurman. And sorry, I forgot to mention the one on 6,000 West was submitted by Ryan Kitchen. And they were concerned about the speeds on the hill, the crest of the hill there. The one submitted by Kendall Thurman was relative to the intersection of 10,400 North and 6,000 West. They're requesting crosswalks there at that intersection. That one's a tricky one because
Wait,
there's
which
only-
one was it? 10,400 and 6,000? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because the crosswalks in and of themselves are not a problem there. The problem is when we paint a crosswalk and we tell a child that's a pedestrian, that's a safe place to cross.
And there's no sidewalk.
There's no sidewalks on 3 of the 4 corners. There's no sidewalks there.
But I feel like it'll be taken care of when you get that city trail in, going through Canterbury North and then hitting Canal, and then you can then go underneath Mitchell Hollow, and because that's what they're trying to do.
No, this is 10th, it's by the old red church.
by the
10,400.
Strasburg,
That-
by the
that
Strasburg
four-way
Church
intersection.
and the ball
Oh, that
field
one's
there.
awful.
Yeah, right there. And like I said, that one, I actually concur, there needs to be sidewalks, or crosswalks, but it's difficult for us to play crosswalks unless we have a place to take them to. There 3 of the 4 corners of that intersection don't have sidewalk. And so you put them across to the shoulder and then tell them fend for themselves, and so our liability folks, I've got to have a conversation with the trust on that, because need to understand their position. As an example, they told us we've got various sidewalks and down a lot of these roads, like 6,000 West, we've got sections of sidewalk where you got sidewalk, then you got an older home with no sidewalk, then you got sidewalk, older home with no sidewalk. We wanted to make little kind of dirt ramps off the end of the sidewalk and kind of get the pedestrians the shoulder. Trust said, no, don't do that. They said, just put up a sidewalk closed sign. And we said, so what is somebody supposed to do when they come down the sidewalk? And they said, they're supposed to find their own way and determine for themselves what's safe. And, you know, if you don't have a safe facility to take them to, so that's the problem at 6,000 West and 10,400 is we don't have a safe facility to take them to. Even though the kids, you know, you'll see them walking down the shoulder of the road. It's, you know, the liability side of things is saying, look, if it's not the facility, don't direct them there. They need to find their own way there. So that's a difficult one, because in and of itself, the crosswalk need there, I look at it and say, yeah, that makes sense. We ought to put crosswalk there. But and then the last one that we received was from Carlos Romano, and this one's actually relative to the high school kids parking at the roads that are closest to the high school in Lenard, the Lennar development.
That would never happen.
Yeah, believe it or not, the kids are parking down the street.
Yep. I never anticipated that.
Yeah. So anyway, we are going to do a survey there of the neighborhood, whether they would like to have a permit parking program or whether they would like to just have parking takeaway during school hours. If we take parking away broad sweep during school hours, then the residents can't park there either. But having a permit parking program is not any fun either, because then when somebody comes to visit you, you got to take them out the little, you know, door hanger or window hanger, you know, to say, hey, I can park here. But that's really the only solution. We could take away parking all the time. We can take away the parking some of the time, or you can park by permit. We would concur that it's a problem. The kids just need to park on campus.
So do you think the parking issue there is because I know there's enough parking in there because I jog up in there and half the parking lot's empty. So I think a lot of that occurs because the kids don't want to pay the $25 parking fee. Isn't a $25 parking fee they have to pay?
It's 15.
15?
At least that's what I remember. But I think it's partly they don't want to pay for the parking fee. I think the other part of it is
Convenience?
is this time of year, a lot of the sophomores are now starting to drive, right? And so
Unfortunately.
at the first of the year, the sophomores, sorry.
My daughter's
Look
a
at that.
sophomore.
Mine is too, and I
Come
agree.
My
on.
grandson's going to be one here.
Yeah.
There you is.
At the first years, the sophomores are too young, and then you start picking up more and more kids that have the ability to drive. Well, they should drive. I'm not going to get into, but they do drive, and so yeah, they're like, I don't want to buy the parking pass for the next 2 months or
And
whatever.
this is why we need a district split. We need more parking spaces up in this area.
That
Yeah.
will for sure solve that problem. But I think we should talk to Lone Peak, because you know what another problem is? You have to pay for each car you want to park. So if my kid has to drive a different car one
Right.
day, like there's nowhere else, like I'm not paying $20 more
Right.
for her to park a different car a different day.
You know,
So Lone Peak should work with us on that. I think it's not just us, it's them.
Why do they even need to pay a parking fee? I mean, I understand it too, but if it's pushing all the parking
Yeah.
into the neighboring streets, why not
is
eliminate
that
the
something we
parking?
can
Because
ever
there's
get in
more
our
than
local
enough parking
agreement
there.
and govern?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I concur with Brittany. I mean, I don't understand what they use the parking fees for, but like I've had kids at BYU and I've got kids at Lone Peak, right? And so the kids at BYU, they just pay their parking fee, but then they can just switch it car to car. They switch it digitally. You know, so if they're going to take a different car the next day, they just switch it and they switch the parking pass. The kids at Lone Peak, you have to buy a sticker for each of the cars that you might drive.
I'll call my school board rep.
And but yeah, so that neighborhood one's not unforeseen. We have no parking, and when we approved the development, we approved no parking on Featherstone. We thought they'd park down Featherstone, but we thought the residents would, for lack of a better word, fill the parking in front of their houses a little more than they are, so to speak. And so the mayor and I went, and we talked to a resident there, and she kind of said, student, resident, student, resident. And there was probably at least 20 cars that day or more, and 2 or 3 of them were residents, and most of them were the students. And,
What if they put signage up saying residential parking only, other cars will be towed?
the hard part is, for the police, how do they know? How do they know who the residential cars are? You know, that's why a permit parking, you hang it in your door. and
Well, I
then
don't know.
police
I guess
know.
if they looked up the license plate number and they lived in Alpine and they're parking in front of residence in Highland, I think I'd be suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to the chief.
I don't
and
know. I don't know what
What
the
it-
answer is.
What I had thought that the three answers were, like I said, you can just take away parking altogether, which probably the residents don't want. You could take away car parking just from 7:30 to 3:30. Nobody gets to park from 7:30 to 3:30. Or you could do a permit parking where if you park there, you gotta, bring the little permit out and hang it over the mirror or whatever you do.
And we thought,
That might be a good idea.
let's ask the residents what they see as the
Yeah.
solution. Give those
Yeah.
three options, what out of those, and it's really just the one street off of Featherstone. 'Cause we thought there'd
Yeah,
be parking, it seemed to be just the one little side street closer to the high school. They're turning and that way they could run into the classes as fast as it seems to be that road. As we drove around, it didn't seem to be going too far up Featherstone,
Yeah, we
so.
have the first 400 feet of Featherstone already signed as no parking, because we had anticipated that during the development. But I think as Ivory develops further west, the streets that are closest to the high school, it's obviously going to overflow to them. And so whatever we do here, we'll probably do on those other streets, whatever we figure out here. But those are the four ones that we've had officially turned in as traffic calming requests. We've been working on some others because they were underway, but it's just those four are the ones that did all the requirements, paid the money, got 5 signatures from their neighbors, everything that they needed to do.
Thank you. Okay, you want to do this discussion now, or do we want to do this later? The items are on your screen.
One that I would like to see is the power conduits for lights at Mountain Ridge Park. I think it'd be great to have some lighting around that trail. And that's what I'm thinking about when I read this, but I'm sure you've already got conduits. But,
No, we don't. That's part of what that conduit.
so we're working with people to donate money for more trees in the buffer zone. And I know $5,000 has been donated, so that's 10 trees. But, to me, it would be kind of fun if we had conduits and things along there for lighting on the trail. Maybe even at the holidays, decorate some of those trees. I don't know. I'm not, just kind of fun things to think about. But I think it'd be great to have power there.
Yeah, I think, getting the conduits in would be the good step, but the bollard lighting really does add a sense of safety in those darker corners of the park, and it really provides a nice kind of feel or ambiance in the evening.
Can you do solar bollard lighting? Is that something you guys have looked into?
Yeah,
Because Big T
we're open
does do
to it.
that.
I mean, the thing of it is, we were gonna run, and we can run wireless cameras, too. We were gonna run conduits around for the cameras anyway, so if you run in the trench, why not throw a conduit in there? And then we're also trying to run conduits and sleeves for future ball field lighting. So the conduit was kind of to be all, but,
Okay.
not opposed to looking at the,
So
solar
if you wanted to
bollard
light the
lighting.
soccer field or baseball field or anything, then stuff
Yeah,
would be
It-
lit.
It appears super expensive to light the western soccer field. So what we had thought with the soccer fields is that we could probably double head the baseball lighting and kind of light that more eastern soccer field from the baseball lighting and have the heads face each direction, if you will. So some of the heads face to the west to light the soccer field, some of the heads face to the east to light the baseball field on that common line between them. That's kind of what our thought was. Best
So
way to-
how much would that light up the neighborhood?
Similar to what the pickleball is.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
similar to the pickleball.
Yeah.
That
I
wasn't
mean,
too bad.
They
Um,
cast,
but this
they
will be
cast a
closer
little
to the
farther
house.
with the
If you do
baseball,
baseball
but,
diamond, that gets closer to the house's play.
Yeah, but
I'd
he's
actually-
talking
yeah.
about lighting up the soccer field as well as the baseball.
yeah.
I'm just wondering how
Yeah,
that,
I mean, they'd have to cast them a little farther to just do it.
you'd
one
want
side. I
it
mean,
so it doesn't light up
the,
people's houses.
It's just how many lights you want to add, right? The more, you can keep it more directional, the more poles you add, the more light heads that you add, the more directional you keep it. The less poles, larger area, you got to aim the the head's longer, right? So if the pickleball lighting is all fairly focused
Right.
and downward, and so it's all just a function of the number of holes you put in.
Is the pickleball just an automatic, it turns on at a certain time, or is it motion? that
Oh, you
slows
have
it?
to push there's a little push button.
Okay.
So it automatically stops going off right now. I think Josh has got it set for 10, if I remember right. So it won't turn on, but when you get there, if they're not on, you just walk up and there's a push button by the basketball court, and there's a push button between all, in that little central
Yeah, the little-
area between the courts, and you push the push button, and then they come on. They're remarkable in that they turn on fast. And when they're dark and you
There's
push it,
no build-up.
it's not like the old lights that went gradually
Yeah.
brighter, brighter. It's like you push it, and like 2 seconds later, the whole place is just lit up like daytime. It's pretty impressive.
If the new general plan has dark sky component built into it, which I believe it will pretty strongly, believe that, will that impact the lighting options that you have for the soccer field and baseball field?
Well,
I don't know all the ins and outs of dark sky.
two components. It depends on how you look at dark skies. Dark sky all the time, or is it more in the later night hours, right? Because I wouldn't foresee a time where you're ever going to run, past. I don't think. I mean, that's your choice. I don't think you're going to have a time where you run, the lights and allow the lights to be towards what's a reasonable, nighttime hour
Class
for
10,
lights to turn off.
9:30, 10.
And
9
so, when does the dark sky kick in? How do you want to implement that?
Yeah, it's new to me, to be honest with you, and I'm looking forward to diving into it more, but I do like the concept, and I'm just wondering what kind of impact it would have on something
what
like this.
I would foresee more is, your all night street lights. You might dim out in the late night hours, but really, if you go into a lot of the newer developments in Highland, the homes have substantial lighting on them. So if you're actually going to do dark sky, it's going to be a lot of working with your private residents. A lot of the new homes have all night substantial lighting on them, like significant lighting, like
I
brighter
even
than
light
street
my
lights.
aspen trees.
Yeah. So
I would think in the park, this is just my opinion, but, I think having lights for the soccer fields and baseball diamonds, we could eventually do it. But I would think all lighting should be directed into the park, because if you don't, then you've got problems.
Well, no, and I think that comes in, I think our code shows it has to only have so many looms or something off it, so we just have to, but like you said, we have to be careful to make sure it's downward and covering, but it is gonna be hard, because you're covering, I think, a field, how to try to contain everything when you're doing a big field.
the broader areas you cover, the more cast off light you get, right? Because you're not able to, even with our pickleball courts, even though that's a fairly large area, it's in comparison with soccer field, it's a much smaller area, and so you're able to focus it more downward, inward, so to speak. And they're getting better and better. Like I'm quite impressed with some of the fixtures, like down at Art Dye. You can see them from the road, but when you get down there, they don't cast off nearly as much, secondary light, I guess you'd call it, as they used to. So I'm fairly impressed there. But yeah, I mean, the more you try to broadcast it, the longer, flatter you try to broadcast it, the more secondary light you're going to get. So it's always going to come down to a balance there. So initially, we're just trying to get in enough conduits that if we can fund adding lights, we don't have to tear up the world.
So council, with it being 8:40 and we had a late night last night, I'm going to give you a recommendation that we look at some of this and then we come back on Tuesday and maybe try to make some things just,
I'd like to go an extra hour.
you want to?
Absolutely.
Liar.
I agree with Kim.
Hey, let's keep the conversation
No,
going.
just kidding.
I move we adjourn.
I'm kind of feeling a general consensus that power conduits is something we
Yes.
want.
Yeah,
though.
Yes.
I think your
Okay.
power,
Yes.
con- I mean,
Is there anything else on that list or something else you definitely want to see in the budget?
Well,
Uh,
I
Or
think we
definitely
need,
don't.
need the emergency manager.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And then I'd just like to know on the traffic calming box, and then we can talk about these other things, the legislative consultant, I'm open on that, Alpine Highway, I'm open on that.
Yeah.
And
I-
we maybe do that next.
I think the maintenance building in Mountain Ridge Park, we definitely need something there to house. I mean, because you probably need something for the baseball field mower there, but can we get it below $200,000?
We can certainly look at options. That was kind of a, if we do it something similar to, let's see, the cemetery building, right? That's what this was kind of comparable to.
This one's comparable to our well buildings. This
Oh,
is
the
co-
well.
This is what the council wanted to put it.
Yeah, it looks nice.
This is the, the elevated one. So the one, by the way, if you haven't gone, the building, and I haven't gone since it was framed. I haven't gone all this week, but they had it all framed by end of last week. They should be mostly skinned out with it. And the cemetery, we'll start to put the concrete floor in, but the building itself should be fairly close to done at the cemetery. Like I said, I went Thursday and Friday, but I haven't gone yesterday, today.
I guess my question just goes back to the previous one I asked on the park maintenance building. Is it poured 100%? I want it to look nice, I think, by the cemetery building. But do you need to build it in this year's budget, or do you need it after you get the baseball
Parks
diamonds and
maintenance
stuff?
building or the maintenance building at Mountain Ridge?
Well,
Park? I'm sorry.
the maintenance building at Mountain Ridge Park.
and when you're saying this year, are you talking the budget?
Well,
year
this
that
is
ends
budget
June?
year 25.
Yeah.
Well, we
So
would,
I'm just,
we would-
because the
we would-
park's not gonna be finished this next year.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
When will the park be finished?
yeah, we're trying to have everything finished in this phase, what we can fund by end of this calendar year.
By the end of
you know-
December 31, 2024.
Right.
So you're gonna need something for spring. You're gonna need to put the snow blower in
No,
there.
I understand, but I didn't know we were gonna try to get the baseball diamond done by.
Yeah, we're
December
trying to do the
31st.
baseball diamond this summer.
Oh, okay.
That's we're pushing hard.
So this should be in this year's budget, then, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can always figure out a way to phase things, but it would be great if it could be in this year's budget, because then it's finished around it, right? Park's finished around it. That's what we're pushing hard for. We just want to get these last couple decisions about the park and where certain elements are going, and the way construction goes, and it shouldn't have to go this way, it's just the way it does go. As long as there's a decision pending, there's an excuse why tractors aren't moving, right? And so the quicker we can get all these pending decisions no longer pending, and this is exactly what we're doing, then it's easier for us as staff to put the pressure and say, okay, all the questions are answered, go, get it done, go,
So on the
go.
park is really just a conduit, and the maintenance building is what you need?
Well, I'm talking more about the neighbors and things that we met with before, and, where and if we're putting the ninja course and those elements, it's that, for lack of a better word, uncertainty. Even though it shouldn't affect the sprinklers that are going in the soccer park, it does. It's just, if there's any element of uncertainty, it's kind of.
So
an
with the
excuse to drag your
budget,
feet.
is there going to be other expenses in the park if we move the ninja course over? Because I saw your list, hey, you got to
Yeah,
move
if you
your
move-
main water line.
If you move the ninja course, like, you'd be spending about $30,000 to relocate the items that are under there, as much as 30,000, maybe less, but that is, kind of a cost that would come with it, because we ran water lines and electrical lines through there without regard to any type of improvement, because we just thought it was grass. And so, we didn't plan them. So that would come with it as an expense. Can be done, but it's another expense, But like I say, I'm not trying to force you to choose any one in particular element. It's just, if the moving parts can stop moving, then it's easier to say, okay, this is what we have money for, this is what we're doing, get it done.
So
I don't think we have the option of not moving the park now that we've thrown it out there. And, I mean, I would hate to be the one that would go to those neighbors. And
No,
say,
I'll go down. I'm not moving it. There are too many implications of moving it, if you looked at the board there, and those people bought their house knowing that that was on the general plan. And so now us as taxpayers have to pay to then move it and have it in a location that will essentially cut off the soccer fields, not have shade, cost us $30,000, even though they knew that it would be there when they bought their house and built their house. It's 3 people there versus 21,000 residents that are going to be using this park. It's like me saying, you know what, I moved into my house and now I don't like the traffic in front of my street. So you guys need to figure out a way to move all of that traffic because I don't like it now after I bought my house.
Is that like the tool safety box?
Let's say that again.
I'm just teasing her.
So
That's
but-
why we did the tool
but,
safety
you know,
box.
one of the things that the residents have said that probably came from the last two months, they're saying we hadn't seen any renderings that had that ninja course, and so it was a little bit surprising to them. So I that's where we have to kind of balance this. I know we've been discussing it. I don't think our updated plan
Did
had.
it?
And so Kim, I think we've been discussing it for years
Yeah.
about a ninja course. I don't think we showed it in drawings maybe for them to realize. where
But
the
when they did buy their houses and build their houses, it was a parks maintenance building right there, and their lots were actually cheaper because of that. And so we actually listened to them when they did a petition asking not to put it there, and instead put park amenities there instead. And so that's exactly what we did. They went out, asked for a petition not to have the parks maintenance building, the pickleball's there. They just wanted a park there, and so that's what we put in.
So this, I understand we're discussing this, but guys, that comes to the budget, because this cost will be something, if it be 30,000, that has to come out of the budget.
Although the Ninja course itself isn't in the budget, so
Correct.
whenever that goes in, we'd be considering the
Well, and
additional
that's-
cost.
But why wouldn't you build the I mean, I support the ninja course. I think we can debate a lot about where it should go and understand Kim's argument there, but when are we going to budget for it? Why not budget for it now? Because you're
Yeah,
going to have to
and
do the
finish off the
infrastructure
park.
anyway.
It's 355? So let me ask you this,
355,
Andy.
that's, we got a bid for 355 there to do the ninja course. The Eagle Mountain one, the one that's kind of the S-shaped one, is 355.
So how much of the soccer field, if we did move it over, because I mean, that's a topic of discussion, how much of the soccer field does that impair?
It's probably like the top, when I say the top, the northernmost, 40 or 40-ish feet of the 40 to 50 feet of the soccer fields.
Because
you know.
the pictures I've seen has it kind of in between the 2 soccer fields.
Yeah,
But
Scott, if you look
it
at the one
shrinks
soccer
the-
field,
it
it gets
shrinks the west
smaller.
one.
We
The
actually
west one's a
little
smaller than the
smaller.
field. We shrunk it
Oh,
down. So what happened by moving the ninja? Now, let me ask you this, Andy, just so we understand budget-wise.
Yeah.
Currently, right now, what you're saying is there's water lines in that area where you'd go ninja.
There's water lines and electrical lines. The electrical lines, there's water lines, our main sprinkler line, the main sprinkler lines there, the power lines for the power to the west sprinklers, and then some future power for the maintenance building. And then there's the fiber optic that runs the cameras are all there. The power and the fiber optic could maybe stay as long as we could figure out how to plant the different poles for the S-band around them. They could maybe stay. We wouldn't want to leave the water line, so because you know you don't want to leave a live water under something like that and then have it break and then you're
Now,
tearing
what
it all
size are you
apart.
talking? Are you talking 1 inch, 2 inch,
Oh no, the water
4
line
inch?
6 inch.
6 inch?
6-inch water line, and then the power conduits. There's a 4-inch and then a couple 1 inches for other things. So the $30,000 was a rough estimation to move all of them. That's just a rough estimation, but there is some expense in any case to put it in the middle.
So, I'm sorry I wasn't here to the workshop thing. I knocked people's doors though on Thursday with the mayor, but, so I'm just looking at this new map that has the ninja here.
Yeah,
Which makes
the one
the-
with the ninja in between the two pavilions.
Okay, yeah, and I see that, and I saw that when we walked around with it. But the question I have is if we put it back to where it originally was,
Yeah.
And your road, the access road is going right along the fence line. Could
Right.
you not, if you put it back over in this area where it originally was, that I think Kim proposes, or is a proponent, couldn't you get some trees on the other side of it still?
Um,
On the west
the-
side of it, just
right-
for a buffer, a little bit of buffer?
right, you could maybe put a few. The right about 5 to 8 foot, because not everything's not perfect, but off the fence is the big water line kind of looping up through that area.
Uh-huh.
So any trees that go right adjacent to the fence need to be very columnar. Councilman Courtney and some of the residents were looking at some kind of columnar.
Sure.
They're arborvitae that
We
could go
talked
there
about
along
that.
the fence. Anything that went kind of adjacent to the pickleball court, we just need to make sure that there's enough room for the canopy to grow and still take a truck through there. So we need to save all of that road or that alley is all grass. I want to make sure everybody understood that, because the residents hadn't understood that came tonight. So it's just grass. It's going to have some type of a grid or some type of strengthening there that, the grass can go through, but it's just grass. We want to save 12-foot wide corridor by about 14-foot tall to bring whatever through, the temporary stage.
So, and
Whatever
I
it
understand
is,
that, but
So
is
there
how
a
much
little bit
room
of
do we have that we could plant trees to kind of
Yeah.
buffer?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of room. We just got to look at what those trees are going to do as they grow, right? I
Right,
think
and
there
where
is
the big
some
water line
ability-
is.
Anything that's adjacent to the wall, that's directly adjacent to the wall, is going to need to be something like extremely columnar, because we don't want the roots to ruin our water line. But kind of between the drive aisle and the Ninja, there might be the ability to squeeze in some trees there.
Now,
Uh,
that's my question.
And we would do what we could, there.
But they also have already planted trees in their backyard. I know that, I have a street that runs by my house that has traffic on it, and I just planted trees in my backyard to shield it from there. And so talking to the guy in the first house, he already anticipated that, planted trees in his backyard, and he said once the leaves are growing in, it's actually done a great job of shielding the park.
So, and I'm not saying this is what we should, let me ask you a couple questions, because this could affect budgetary, because this is kind of starting to
Yeah,
spend money.
It's all kind of interwoven.
Councilmember, or Doug mentioned, hey, is this the decision we need to be making now, or is this going to be at the time when we can fund the Ninja course? I mean, do you want to try to get this done now, while they have all the equipment
Well,
in there?
I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, and there's ideal world and there's real world. Real world is what we can afford, right? But the ideal world, anything that involves concrete or foundations or anything like that, it would be ideal to get in now, because we can, with lighter equipment, get, say, like the poles to the Ninja course out there or something, but, putting the outline of the Ninja course, or even go so far as the stage, the stage base is all concrete. Ideally, anything that was concrete, you'd want to access while it's dirt, right? Because otherwise, you've got to figure out a way to get the concrete out there, or the equipment to even prepare for the concrete. You can pump concrete quite a ways these days, but you still got to get the tractors out there to dig the hole to put the concrete. So ideally, in an ideal world, everything was concrete based, or when I use concrete, I use that because it's the heaviest, right? It's heaviest to get out there. You use the heaviest equipment to get it there. We'd put in now, and that way we could landscape up against it. But, we don't always get the ideal. And so the easier one to add later, if you're going to add the Ninja course later, would be the west one, because you're going to destroy less to get to it.
So, as we look at this, and I'm just looking at the power conduit lights for Mountain Ridge Park, you're saying, hey, maybe we need to have an item A there, which is moving of a water line, if we're looking to put a Ninja course in. And I think the question would be, is that something the city wants to occur? In that council, you have to say, yes, I'm okay, and I'm going to have the taxpayers take that on as the extra $30,000 to move that. Is it something we should go and ask the residents, saying, hey, we would contemplate this if you'll donate to move this? Is it something that My other question is on the soccer fields. Of the two soccer fields here, do we have, like, are the ones over by the high school, are they this size? Or are these
Yeah.
size unique to what we don't have anywhere else in high? Like, down at Mitchell Hollow Park, do we have these size or soccer fields?
Yeah,
You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. Josh confirmed today earlier that the ones at the soccer park by the high school were this size.
That's right,
Um,
the championship size.
Yeah, he confirmed that. Mitchell Hollow is pretty big. I can't believe you couldn't get a full-size soccer field down there. It's pretty big. So I think Mitchell Hollow and the soccer park probably both can accommodate this size. Would be off the top of my head.
So this just, those who have had kids maybe play a lot of soccer at this size, is it something where they'll have competition and rotate, or does it matter if there's two fields here for competition, or is it one field and one was smaller? Does that make sense? Is it like baseball diamonds where they'll have all the competition come there, or is it, no, you can have one field one size, and you can have another field a different size because they're just gonna come play soccer?
And I've coached soccer a number of years, and ironically, I couldn't tell you the size. I mean, I don't know the championship size. I know football upside down and backwards, but not soccer. Having said that, the consistency of size is very important in competition. When we train on a field that is going to be the next week's size, because it makes a difference on spacing. There's so many things that are critical in soccer. So having coached it, I would recommend we have the same size for both of them.
So you want 7v7, 9v9, 11v11, and that is what the sizes are for those fields. If you can put two 11v11s in there, then that would be ideal, because then not only can you have 11v11 twice that playing, but also then it'll accommodate 7v7, 9v9.
My preference, it sounds like to me that all of this is surrounding the ninja course decision. Given that that is going to be on our agenda on the 7th, and we will probably have people here for that purpose, it seems like it'd be better to have the discussion when we have residents here.
And they can hear it.
And
I'll
they
be
can
honest,
hear
I
it.
was thinking, hey, I looked at the time, I go, we're gonna have to tell some, if we're talking about this, we should have told some residents, I gotta go tell them, watch 8:45 tonight meeting. We had a discussion on, but you are right, Doug. This is something, we told our residents that we were gonna discuss the park hours. And that really wasn't, I guess we're gonna have some budget. We're gonna have temporary budget so we can talk about it then too.
Okay.
But we need to, guys, this is a major thing for our park. We need to decide, are we gonna, because it does, if we move the ninja course, it makes that one soccer field a little smaller, and we are gonna incur cost on that. We've just heard 30,000. We just need to say, no, we're okay. We see that benefits us as the park. It benefits those residents. I understand. Some of the things, it's hard when you look and going, man, and I do think that the teenagers are going to be there. And I understand that they built by a park. I don't mean we try to put every impact we can close to them. But at the same time, I mean, I'm looking, okay, you're going to have kids running up at the top of that ninja course. How close is that to the house? Now, I understand that and I keep talking about a pool. I do have a person that has a slide, and the kids get up that top of that slide, and I'm looking at their taller than my fence, and I'm going, hi. And I've tried to build every tree I can to try to block it, so I don't see that kid over there, they say hi. Because I have a pool next to it. I'm in my pool, I don't want them necessarily to see me. I'm not the best looking in a suit.
So what did you, so Kurt, what did you do to be able to
I
not see
built
him?
a waterfall, and then I put trees all
So
around.
you put trees in your backyard? Okay.
I agree, and I've mentioned that that's an option. I had a buffer, my neighbor, and it's a good neighbor. This isn't something about the neighbor. It was a surprise. I didn't anticipate. Oh, you can. She's a good person. I love Lori Call. She's my neighbor. Anyway, this will now, what you're saying, Doug, and I think we need to carry this conversation on, because we're going to have some residents coming specifically about this. Are we going to discuss and make a decision on this ninja course on Tuesday?
It's on the agenda to do so.
Or to make that, okay, so I thought it was more about park timing.
Two different action items. First would be any amendments to the master plan, right? Do we move the ninja course? And then the second will be about park hours.
And did we, I shared about the park hours tonight. Did the residents know the ninja course is on Tuesday night?
I told them as they were here.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure that, if the group that came tonight was to show that,
Well, and that's why we kept telling them, fill out the survey because it'll be part of the council decision next Tuesday, so.
Okay.
Okay, so conduits and maintenance building need to go in the budget.
yes,
And just to make sure I'm clear, when we say the conduit, we're only talking about the conduit, we are not talking about any of the lights.
Correct.
Is that, okay.
It's just the prep work so that we could add lights.
but that okay, to make sure I understand the conduit is not only just for lights around the trail. This conduit can accommodate lights at the baseball diamond, and I have never seen a soccer field with lights, but
As I
you're
said,
put, but that,
I mean, to try and control expense on both fixtures and conduits, what we were thinking is for the soccer field, we'd just use the baseball poles and just aim heads each way. You know, but again, that's just trying to control the expense is what we were thinking. But I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on, you know, downward focused lighting, et cetera. And so if we want to do even more, we could do more.
so
It's just,
was it for the soccer fields or was it just for baseball?
it was baseball and it was the East soccer field, but just with the idea of if we're going to light the soccer field, we'd cast the light off the baseball field pole. One pole, one head pointing towards the baseball field, one head pointing towards the
Oh, okay, so what you're saying, if you could
soccer
light the
fields.
baseball, you could probably light that one soccer field.
That's
down
what we were
below.
thinking,
Okay.
you know, but
Problem is-
trying to minimize the poles just to minimize the expense, right?
Now, Scott mentioned about if we ever decide to add Christmas lights or do something with power, is this conduit going to be conducive to add outlets to be able to do things?
I think we could
Like
add
we want to
outlets.
decorate some trees or something.
I think we'd add outlets to the bollard lighting, you know, in the future when we do the bollard lighting, especially with, you know, a lot of the new LEDs, they don't pull near the power.
No, they're
you know, and-
0.002 of an
Yeah.
amp per.
Yeah, so we could, ultimately, when you set the bollard lighting, you could set some fixtures inside the you know, some plugs inside the bollard lighting, and I think you'd be able to do that off that circuit and off that run.
So Andy, as they go forward, there's one last question because we wanted to, and actually we moved to adjourn at some point, but anyhow,
No one seconded.
when do you need to know how many donations are for the trees, extra trees? When do you have to let your contractor know? As soon as possible?
Yeah, we
And
should-
we have a
mean,
month, we have
I-
2 weeks.
So, we can always add trees
Later?
you know, through the process, we could add trees, but we're gonna have to give, some pretty solid direction relative to the trail placement on Tuesday, because one of the options is to move the trail a little bit more, make a little more room for trees between the trail and the fence. So we're definitely gonna have to give solid direction on that. And, you know, I think, what we know right off the bat, we'd want to give solid direction. And then if the tree donations, you know, quote unquote, trickle in over the next couple of months, we can probably continue to add trees. A little bit of the challenge with the trees, when they're little, not that big a deal to have the heads go past them. But when they're this big, you know, in the future, you know, it'll take a little rework for the sprinklers because if the head's fairly close to the tree, then it cuts it off, right? And so that's the nice part about getting as much trees as we can behind the trail, is just simply that then the big heads that water the big grass aren't cut off by the tree. But, you know, we have trees in all of our parks and we have.
But
to
wouldn't
kinda
you, aren't
deal
you
with-
gonna do on the trees when, I know this is getting nitty gritty, I'm sorry. Wouldn't you do drip system on the trees?
We
If
we
it's
would,
in the xeriscape?
in the xeriscape, we do the drip system.
Okay.
That's why I
sure.
say it's easier to put the trees
Mm.
in the xeriscape because you aren't cutting off any of the
Okay.
spray
makes
heads on the grass,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
So you
know,
just
'cause
need to know sooner than later.
Sooner than later, just so we can make sure that where we put them is best.
Well, I'll watch the foundation, see if there's any donations that come in.
Okay. That'd be good.
Yeah,
Is there
okay.
anything else we need to discuss before we conclude?
I heard a couple
Yeah,
voices
but-
for emergency manager. I don't think I heard a third. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I will say
Just
that's
remember, that's adding on to I mean, I always have a hard time with, we keep adding, this is ongoing, it's not one
It is.
time, it's not reoccurring, but if you feel emergency manager, now, my only question on the emergency manager, Storm, but is that really conducive, same job title?
That, I
Well,
did wonder
let me-
about the same thing.
Let me give you my pitch for that.
Knowing there's two different pitches from two different employee groups on this. So I'll let Andy give you his, and then I have another one that I
Okay.
don't know what's best yet.
Well, mine's best, of course.
We vote with Andy.
No, hey, great. No,
Depends on what he says here.
so my pitch is it's always hardest to fund a permanent employee, right? And so if you couple it with an enterprise fund, the easiest funds to manage and fund are your enterprise funds, right? Because they're utility rate fees that pay for them. It's not your general fund, it's not your property taxes that pay for them. So, number one, it's a source of funding because you're paying for half of the position out of an enterprise fund. Number two, of your emergencies, you know, you got flood, fire, and earthquake, right?
Right.
That's really what we're looking at in Highland, most likely. And so fire is an independent district, so it's tough to have a Highland City specific emergency manager. I don't know we don't have an earthquake utility, so I can't pair them with the earthquake utility. So the other one that I compare them with is flood. And so in my mind, those two actually couple fairly well.
I agree with that.
So you can fund it, and it couples with one of the emergencies you're going to face. So
So,
Now, but what about partnering with Alpine? I imagine Alpine's going to have a need similar to what our
Well,
need is.
we-
If they want to
we-
give attention to emergency management, which we all should be doing.
Yeah.
And by the way, earthquake is by far the most dramatic to prepare for, but the most likely is flooding. That is the most likely. So I really like your pairing here. I like it a lot.
And what
But
was the?
What about teaming with a 60-40 with
Yeah.
Alpine?
I think we could definitely have those conversations, you know, and I did, the problem, and this is just a frank, you know, discussion, because when we talked to the county emergency manager about this, you know, there's another city that had somebody that, you know, wanted to go full-time, and it was like, well, you know, could they work half in Highland and half in another city? It's like, well, okay, when the emergency happens, where's their loyalty? You know?
Well,
Or
Alpine
who-
and Highland's pretty,
who they serve. Yeah, they're a little closer. They're a
Yeah.
little closer, obviously. but
Linden
that's the
has a
one
part-time
complication,
that
right?
wants to go full-time.
Sorry?
But I would not, Linden has a part-time emergency manager.
Yeah.
She wants to go full-time. She's fantastic, but it would be silly for us to partner with her because where's she going to go during the emergency is the question. But Alpine Highland, to me,
They're a little
seems like
closer.
a good marriage.
They're a little closer.
And
Yeah,
it's a Lone Peak thing anyway, so.
The other conversation I've had with another employee happens to be with Lone Peak, so it was kind of a shared type of an idea that we've come up with in the fire department. So so honestly, I'm not sure I'm ready to say which I would recommend is best because I can see both, honestly. So I think if council is interested in this, if you can fund it, then if you choose to fund it, then give me a bit of time to sort out what I think would be ultimately best as far
Well,
as
if
where
it's
this
with Lone
employee
Peak,
goes.
we've got to get with Alpine. and their
Certainly, we would have, that would be a whole nother conversation we'd have to work through with Alpine City.
so maybe let's just direct that we have these conversations.
I agree.
Okay.
My question is, what does emergency manager do?
I can send you all that material. I have Lyndon's job description and how she spends her time. I can send that to you.
That'd be helpful.
Now, so Andy, I agree. And Scott, I want you to help because you've had more experience in the council. When I see the emergencies, now we've had some fires, you know, I think the only area where we probably had a really area was up by Brittany where we had the fires there, but really.
Lots of emergencies.
Yeah, but your neighborhood's probably had more. You've had more floods.
Yep,
You've had more fires.
yep,
You've needed more speed traps.
yep.
You've needed, you know, but I'm just saying, all these things, is we look, but in the city, it's always been usually with water. I mean, if you look, you know, we've had, of course, this flood. We had flooding last year. You had the flood up at Viewpoint. You know, I understand the sewer aspect, but I assume that dealt with water, you know, even though it was sewage. But it seems to be, it's water, it seems to be some slipping. And now, yes, we do have some wildland interface a little bit, but it's Alpine that has the wildland interface more when there's been fires that they've had to evacuate other than up at, and I guess we might get.
But that's
some-
Lone Peak Safety.
Yeah, and that's what I said. If we're going wildland, that's Lone Peak Safety. If it's If we're needing to do storm drain water or flooding, that is more storm drain. If you're, I think that's what we have to decide, is it, but maybe we can talk, because it is public safety, that they could be involved, and maybe Alpine has the same concern. I know that it appears there'll be a lot of meetings that this emergency manager, we're supposed to, I think by state code, you were saying something, Ron? That's right. That by state code,
We are supposed to have one assigned.
even if we have a council member assigned?
I do have to say though, like, you know, with the recent flooding incident, I did not feel like we were lacking because there was an emergency management set in place within the church and the neighborhood. And so, you know, it really was well taken care of.
Well, let's have more discussion on this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else before we conclude?
No, I think we're done.
Then let's take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Kim, second by Scott. We are now, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned.
Nay. No.